So, welcome. Hopefully you've just clicked on from the men's singles video. If not, and you just stumbled across this video, this is me, Ben Beckman, talking about the 8 players who have qualified for the World Tour Finals in the women's singles. This is the second discipline that I'm talking about. For me, the women's singles, it's the least diverse discipline at these World Tour Finals, with only 5 different nations participating. I mention that because it's quite interesting, but also quite funny, considering that if you go back maybe a decade or so ago, women's singles was known for being one of the most diverse. I still think it is a diverse discipline in general, but at the highest level, at the top level right now, there isn't as much diversity as there may have been, like I said, during the golden generation. And the other thing about the women's singles is there's quite a key player missing, and that is Chen Yufei of China. She's the only player in the women's singles this year to have beaten An Seong, the heavy favourite, twice this year. So the fact that she isn't playing will give An Seong a little bit more confidence, I guess, or make her an even stronger favourite. The reason Chen Yufei hasn't qualified is that only 2 players from one nation can qualify, and China are in the rather fortunate position that they have so many good women's singles players, and they have 2 players that have qualified 2nd and 3rd, and that is Wang Zhi Yi and Han Yue. So Chen Yufei, unfortunately, wasn't able to get a spot. But whilst it is the least diverse discipline, the players going are a good mix. It's a good mix of experience, youth, players returning after a few years away from the World Tour Finals, and there's some debutants as well, and I'm going to talk about all of them. And like I did with the men's singles, I'm going to go in the order that they're qualifying. So number 1, unsurprisingly, it's An Seong. An Seong is on course for an absolutely ludicrous year. She's on course to win 11 titles. If she's to win these World Tour Finals, she will finish the year on 11 titles, which would mean she would match Kenta Momota's 2019 Guinness World Record, actually, when he won 11 titles in one year. Not only that, but she has only lost 4 times in 2025. So she has 68 wins and 4 losses, which gives her a win-loss percentage of 94.4%. This means that if she wins the World Tour Finals, winning all 5 matches, she would finish the year on 94.8%, 73 wins out of 77, which is just absolutely ludicrous. And that would be the highest in the modern era in the women's singles, that's 2006 and later. So basically the Super Series and the World Tour era. The number 1 currently is Li Jiarui, who in 2012, with 56 wins and 5 losses, finished with a percentage win-loss record of 91.8%. So it'd be quite high about that. The only player close to An Seong in terms of like total match played, because whilst there in 2012, Li Jiarui played 61 matches. That's 16 less than what An Seong could potentially play. The only player that's close to that was in 2019. Chen Yufei played 74 matches in that year, and she finished with 65 wins, which was an 87.8% win-loss record percentage, which is still absolutely amazing. But just shows you An Seong's one is absolutely out of this world. Really, the only blip to the season for An Seong was her inability to defend her world title, where she ended up winning bronze. And it wasn't just the fact that she ended up with bronze, it was more for me that whilst the player that beat her, Chen Yufei, thoroughly deserved it, played a really great tournament, played brilliantly in the semi-final, it was the way that An Seong played. She just sat back and didn't really do too much. She kind of, whether she froze or whatever, having a bad day or whatever, it was just probably one of the it was a poor performance from An Seong. She just wasn't able to do anything. But since then, she has obviously really developed her game, and she continues to develop it. She keeps developing more and more areas, more attack, more creativeness, better. Every department she's clearly trying to bring up and working really, really hard on. And the way she's been playing as of late, or even before then, to be honest, she will be the heavy favourite. Something that exacerbated by the something I said earlier, that Chen Yufei, the only player who has beaten An Seong twice this year, hasn't qualified. Now, despite being so dominant over the past few years, probably since the Tokyo Olympics, that An Seong's kind of There was a period actually after that where Akane Yamaguchi was pretty dominant, but definitely the last 2 years since, from 2023, I would guess, An-seong has been the player. Despite that, she hasn't won the World Tour Finals title since 2021, which, again, that was the edition that was held in Bali, and it was the end of a rather disrupted year. That's not to say that those titles don't mean anything, but it's just that, since the World Tour final, the World Tour has kind of got back to normality, and we've seen An-seong dominate. She hasn't been able to win the World Tour Finals title. Last year, she was beaten rather comfortably by Wang Zhi Yi in last year's semi-final. But, again, the difference between these two editions is huge, especially given the fact that Wang Zhi Yi, since those World Tour Finals where she actually went on to win, An-seong hasn't lost to her. She's played her 6 times in 2025. A number of those have been in finals, and she's won all 6. And the head-to-head with An-seong and Wang Zhi Yi is now 15-4. So, is there anyone that can stop An-seong? There certainly are. There are some players capable of beating her. I think with chief amongst those is the current world champion, Akane Yamaguchi of Japan. However, there's a question mark next to her that I will get onto when I talk about her. And there are a few others. I think Han Yue is another player. Again, I will talk about them when I get to those players specifically. But there aren't many that, in all honesty, I think can stop An-seong. And like I said, I think she'll be happy that Chen Yufei wasn't able to qualify, because I think she would have probably been the one player that she would have really worried about at a major tournament, a player with so much experience, and the player that's beaten her twice this year. I think that would have given her maybe a few seeds of doubt. I think with her not being there, An-seong's going to go in with a lot of confidence. So moving on, Wang Zhi Yi, the player I literally just mentioned her, but she is the defending champion. She won this event last year. Like I said, she beat An-seong en route to winning. And it was quite a big win for her last year, because I can remember before the World Tour Finals, it was her and Han Yue that qualified again. Chen Yufei, since the Olympics, hadn't played. She wasn't playing. She hadn't made a comeback by that point. And I can remember talking about the World Tour Finals last year, saying, without Chen Yufei, who was a former Olympic champion and China's top star, how would the new youngsters, Wang Zhi Yi and Han Yue, take that on? Would they be able to handle that pressure? Would they be able to deliver? And they did so rather emphatically, as not only did Wang Zhi Yi win, but she beat Han Yue in the final. So, be interesting again, this question going into this year. It's a slightly different phrased question. It's not like, can both those players, Wang Zhi and Han Yue, do it without Chen Yufei? They've kind of proven that. I mean, Wang Zhi Yi has been in 10 World Tour Finals this year. That's a lot of finals. That's something that shouldn't go overlooked. But of those 10 World Tour Finals, she's only won 3 titles. That was the Malaysia Masters. She did win the China Open Super 1000 and also the Hong Kong Open. And some of those World Tour Finals were back-to-back, including the last tournament she played, Denmark and France. So she has had a very consistent year. I mean, 10 finals. That's really good. Even though the number of titles she's won is quite low, that reminds me of the Daddies in 2019. Where they got to like 10, 11 finals in one year, and they didn't win as many of the finals because they had another pair that was constantly beating them, the Minions. So, Wang Zhi is kind of in a similar situation, but with An-seong. There is a slight difference though with the Daddies in 2019, is that they won. They've 3 big titles they won with the Worlds, the All England, and the World Tour Finals. So they were obviously able to deliver at the biggest tournaments, and Wang Zhi Yi hasn't been able to do that. But I think despite having such a consistent year, many aren't looking at her to defend the title at the World Tour Finals. And I think the big reason for that is kind of already spoken of, is that whilst many might see her as someone that probably will get to the final, she'll be one of the favourites to get there. If she's to face An-seong in that final, the fact that she's played her 6 times this year, and she's lost every single one, despite having some real opportunities to win, namely the All England final, that I think that's why people probably aren't really thinking about her to win the World Tour Finals or to retain her title. The other thing that's quite extraordinary for me about Wang Zhi Yi is that I've just said that she is the defending champion. She has qualified as 2. She's reached 10 finals this year, which is an extraordinary feat. Again, a little bit like Li Shifeng, but even worse, I guess. There's not many people talking about her. Maybe it's because she's lost those 6 finals to An Seong, but I think the big reason is this year we've seen the return of Chen Yifei, and Chen Yifei has defeated An Seong. Chen Yifei has got to a world final. Chen Yifei has won some big tournaments as well, and you know, all that kind of stuff. I think she's getting a lot more of the attention, and it's just put Wang Zhi Yi slightly into the shadows, and that's quite incredible when you consider what she has achieved. I think another reason why she's also been overlooked is Yamaguchi has come back and she won her 3rd world title, and she's also a player who's defeated An Seong. So I think players that are defeated, either you got to be really young and special and really kind of having these great results, these standout results, or like I said, players that have beaten An Seong this year, they're the ones that are getting a little bit more attention, and Wang Zhi Yi hasn't done either of those things. So she will be the main flag bearer for China in this women's singles, alongside Han Yue, who next on the list. So together they were able to deliver without Chen Yifei. I mentioned that it was an all-China final, but can they do the same this year? Again, it's possible, but I'd say if we look at last year as opposed to this year, I think it's looking slightly less likely. So moving on, Han Yue, the other Chinese player in the women's singles, she got to the final of the Asia Championships this year. She's been in 4 World Tour finals this year, but all of them have been silvers. That was the Malaysia Masters, the China Open, the Hong Kong Open, and the China Masters. And all those finals, bar the China Masters, were against Wang Zhi Yi. In fact, like I said, all of Wang Zhi Yi's titles were won when facing Han Yue this year. So usually if An Seong either wasn't there, or An Seong was beaten by, I think, like Chen Yifei, or even there was one time where Han Yue actually did beat An Seong. So that result that where Han Yue beat An Seong was at the China Open, although it must be noted that An Seong did withdraw due to injury midway through like the second game. But that's not to take away from the way that Han Yue played in that match, because Han Yue did win the first game and she was playing really, really well. And I think the way that she plays with quite an old school approach, she's firing all cylinders, and she's solid in her basic game. Her attacking game and her shots are very, very deceptive, and she's very, very skillful, and you know, real delight to watch. She definitely, if she can bring an absolute A game, she's definitely someone capable of toppling or giving a really hard run to An Seong. My only problem is that she can't deliver that absolute best level. It needs to be at her absolute peak, consistent enough. I think if it's slightly down, she will lose quite badly, and that was shown when An Seong and Han Yue faced in the final of the China Masters, and I think An Seong won 11-3. That kind of shows you that if Han Yue is at her absolute best, or very, very close to, she's a real troublesome player, even for someone like An Seong. But if she's slightly down, only slightly, it drops off a cliff for her against a player like An Seong and against other players that are able to retrieve. So, Han Yue was runner-up last year. Can she do it again? I think her 2025 has been better than her 2024. And I think, personally, I think the draw is going to be important. Avoiding An Seong is going to be quite a crucial thing. But I think most players in this draw are probably going to be thinking the same way. Next, it's the world champion, Akane Yamaguchi of Japan. She has had a really very consistent 2025. She's played 12 World Tour tournaments. She's been in 2 finals and she won both of them, 8 semi-finals, 1 quarter and 1 second round. So she's only fallen before the quarterfinals once, and that was actually her last tournament, the Kumamoto Masters, where she lost to Nozomi Okuhara. And it must be said that at that tournament, in her first round, she did roll her ankle, and so her movement was hampered a little bit, and that was partly why she lost to Nozomi Okuhara. So had she not done that, I think some could argue that she would have beaten Okuhara and probably gone on to win the title. I think it would have opened up for her there. So what an insane, but let's not worry too much about that. They're what ifs, but let's take that second round out. What an insanely consistent year for Akane Yamaguchi. Now, I just said let's rule out that second round, but there you can't really because of the injury issues. Will that injury to her ankle hamper her chances at the World Tour Finals? I haven't heard any reports that it's major, and obviously between the Kumamoto Masters and the World Tour Finals there's plenty of time for Akane Yamaguchi to kind of recover, get training and get back to a level. And if that's what she's able to do, and come in full fitness or very close to it, then she's going to be someone that can certainly win the World Tour Finals, and going to be one of the players that I think can really put a lot of trouble to An Seong, because when she's in full flow, when she's very creative with her attacking play, I feel she can keep An Seong guessing and not allowing An Seong to anticipate well, which is something that An Seong's really good at. It takes a lot to kind of keep her on the back foot. I think Akane Yamaguchi has enough variety in her game, enough attacking shots, and I feel that sometimes she plays like surprise shots. That what An Seong's really good at is that if you beat her once or twice with something, if you keep doing that, she'll figure it out and is able to kind of counter it pretty well. What Akane Yamaguchi can do really well is kind of keep all these options so open, and we saw that when Yamaguchi beat An Seong at the Korean Open. It was in full flow attacking mode and a very broad spectrum of shots, and it's very difficult for An Seong to kind of settle. Also, Akane Yamaguchi in full fitness can play at the speed fast enough. That's, I think, in An Seong's post-match interviews when she played Akane Yamaguchi, when she's won or even when she's lost, a big part is the speed of the game. She said that, I can't remember what tournament it was, but there was one where she lost the first game and then was able to come back and beat Akane Yamaguchi. And one of the big things was not just trying to push up and take the front court, but just really trying to match Akane Yamaguchi's speed, because in the first game she wasn't able to do so. And I've seen that as well when Yamaguchi's lost. It's looked like once An Seong can take away the speed or can match her speed and maybe take away certain elements, you can see a little bit of the belief draining from Akane Yamaguchi. I think for her, if she wants to beat An Seong, it's not going to be one of those old matches of theirs where it was a kind of drawn out physical battle. Don't think that's her way forward to win. It's going to be being on the front foot, playing quickly, playing attackingly, the kind of stuff that we saw her when she won the World Championships or when she has beaten An Seong this year. So for me, like I said, injury issue, I'm not quite sure she's going to be 100% fit. I hope so, because I absolutely love watching her play. She's won the World Tour Finals before, so she has the experience. She's a massively experienced player anyway. She's a 3-time world champion. And in all honesty, I'd love to see an An Seong Akane Yamaguchi final. That's the final, in all honesty, that I want to see. Moving on, number 5, Putri Kusuma Wardani. It's been a very solid 2025 for Wardani. She got a world bronze medal, an absolutely brilliant result. She's been in 2 World Tour finals, and they were actually at her last 2 tournaments, the Hilo Open Super 500 and the Australian Open Super 500. So her confidence heading into the World Tour finals will be right up there. On top of these final performances and her world medal, she's also reached 3 semi-finals and 6 quarter-finals on the World Tour. So, like I said, a really, really solid and consistent year, and it just shows the progression that she's had. I've always been a fan of Wardani. I can remember her winning, I think, the Orleans Masters a few years back, and I love the fact that when I compared her to some other Indonesian players, she had a little bit more height. She's a bit taller. Not many Indonesian players have the height on their side these days, but it was more like she had the attacking play, but it was the foot speed, a little bit quicker, a little bit more nimble, and combined with the fact that she's tall and attacking, I thought that was a really good combination. And Indonesians are known for their lovely skills and touch, so I think she just had all these nice attributes to go on. Then I don't think she progressed as quickly from that Alliance Masters. I think it might be that she went off to be a policewoman or something along those lines, but since then she has come back and dedicated herself to badminton, and since she's made that decision, her rise has been like this. And the way that she's been playing, every time I watch her play, I feel like she's improving. At the Australian Open, where she lost in the final to An Seong, she was the only player to really push An Seong. I felt that not only was she showing all those great attacking skills, but I felt her speed and her defense had definitely improved. So yeah, great attacking game, quick on her feet. She's tall, has lovely shots, lovely strokes and shots. And I'm quite excited to see how she's going to play at these World Tour Finals. It will be her debut. She's never qualified for the World Tour Finals before, so that's going to be a factor in how she plays, how does she handle it. But I think for me, with her, while she has the capabilities to do well, I think she needs to use this opportunity as a way, just as a stepping stone to kind of further her career. Another opportunity to keep developing her skills, getting herself into these positions. But she showed at the World Championships that she can deliver great performances at the highest tournaments, and she's been very consistent. She's going to be a dangerous player. If she can keep her consistency good, keep her speed high with her attacking game, she's going to be troublesome for every player at these World Tour Finals. Yeah, like I said, I think here, from the way she's been playing and the fact that her last 2 tournaments she's played, she got to the final and playing great badminton, she can certainly create some opportunities for herself. Number 6, Pornpawee Chochuwong of Thailand. She's been in 3 World Tour Finals and won 1 title. That was the Thailand Masters Super 300, and her runner-ups were at the Thailand Open and the India Open Super 750. Chochuwong has always been a very gifted, talented player with nice strokes. She was always seen as, for me, as the next Ratchanok Intanon in that respect, but hasn't quite achieved the biggest results of probably what she's capable of. I don't think it's unfair to say that while she has definitely produced some great performances and she's a fantastic player, she probably hasn't lived up to what she's potentially capable of. I think she's someone that's could easily have done far more. She's still got plenty more to give in her career, and the fact that she's qualified is testament to the fact that she's had a good year. But you know, she's just one of these players. I think I was, when I saw her name that she'd qualified, I was like, okay, surprised and not surprised. Surprised because I haven't really spoken of her this year, or I haven't really noticed her results, and not surprised because she is a really good player, and while she might not be getting to finals as often, she's still obviously a great player and must be getting through to the latter rounds. One thing that's quite interesting about Pornpawee Chochuwong is that this will be her 3rd time at the World Tour Finals, and she's actually made it out of the group stages every single time. She first qualified in 2021. Always made it out of the group stages, both times actually qualifying from her group first. And I think in some of those groups, she actually had players that were probably seeded and ranked higher than her. So can she keep that record going in 2025? She clearly does. When it comes to this tournament, she brings out a really good game. So can she do it again? It'll be interesting to see what she brings. Moving on, another Thai player, Ratchanok Intanon. She set herself the goal at the start of this year to get back into the top 8 in the world rankings, and she's done that. She is ranked number 8, and she's obviously qualified for the World Tour Finals for the first time in 3 years. It's not been since 2022 that we've seen Ratchanok Intanon at the World Tour Finals, so what a great return for arguably one of the most beautiful players to watch. You know, just an absolutely lovely, fluid style, technically pretty much perfect. And she's done this by having a very solid year. She's reached 2 finals. That was the Indonesian Masters near the beginning of the year and the recent Kumamoto Masters, and she won both of those events. So when she's reached a final, she's won. She then backed up that Kumamoto Masters by reaching the semi-finals of the Australian Open, where she did look rather tired and also had to face a very motivated and in-form and fresh, may I add, Wang Zhi Yi. So her last tournaments, that's going to give her great confidence that she won one and then backed that up the next week with a semi-final, showing she's in great form. A nice cap off to the year. So she's probably going to head into these World Tour Finals full of confidence and ready and raring to go. The other thing for Ratchanok Intanon, she is actually the most experienced player for end-of-year finals in all disciplines. She is the player that, qualified for the first ever time in 2012. That was the Super Series final, so 13 years ago. Now, she might be the most experienced, and she's played a number of World Tour finals and Super Series finals, but she's never made the final. So can she make that happen this year? I think it's going to be quite a stretch for her, because, in all honesty, while she is a fantastic player, it's going to be difficult just purely. I think the World Tour Finals, it's that extra level. Players are even more motivated to win, but it's usually physically quite demanding, because you have to play the same amount of matches as a regular tournament, And whilst the World Tour is still, very high quality from round one, for me in women's singles, there's quite a drop-off in terms of the level after a certain level. Obviously, the World Tour Finals is just the best 8 in the world. So every single match from day one is going to be a real physical battle. So for me, for Ratchanok Intanon to do well, she's going to have to, if she wants to qualify out of a group, the top 2 go through, I think she's going to have to win 1 or 2 of those matches quickly. She can't get drawn into the long drawn-out matches. So I think if it gets physical, or say day 1 and day 2, she has 2 really hard matches, and then she needs to win on the 3rd day, I think her chances drop off quite a lot. It's not that she's unfit or she's not physically strong. I just think with age and the way that she moves around the court, as in, I think a physical game, I've noticed that when her physicality, or if she's quite tired, she'll drop. She finds it difficult to play at the absolute highest level. So I think for me, it's going to be quite important for her to get some easy wins, to try to win some matches quickly. Use her skills to kind of finish the match off quickly. Right, and the last place is the young Japanese player, Tomoka Miyazaki. So unlike Ratchanok Intanon, who's the most experienced, Tomoka is probably the least experienced on the World Tour and for the World Tour Finals. She's not the only debutant. I said Kusuma Wardani is making her debut, but also Tomoka Miyazaki is making her debut. I did say, heading into 2025, one of my first videos of the year, big questions for the year, was whether a player like Tomoka, she had a breakthrough year in 2024, can she back that up in 2025? And obviously qualifying for the World Tour Finals shows that she has. She got 1 title, that was the Taipei Open, Super 300, 2 semi-finals in India and Thailand, and she's, reached 7 quarter-finals. So yeah, a very solid year. Although it must be said, the beginning of 2025 was much better for Tomoka than the second half. Both her semi-finals and that 1 title came in the opening half of 2025. Now, I have heard, I think someone wrote a comment under one of my videos, and so if you're watching this again, you can please confirm this with me, that her original coach is no longer involved with coaching her, and maybe she is struggling. I think they were saying that she was struggling without that kind of guidance. As we know, in any player's career, any stage, but especially in the early days, having a coach that really suits you, that can guide you, can give you the best advice, not just training, but just advice in general, and just be there and you just feel that support, is absolutely crucial. We've seen that with Alex Lanier and Kęstutis Navickas, and I think Tomoka, I've heard, the coach who was similar to that in that vein, is no longer in the picture, and that might explain why her results in the second half of 2025 haven't been as good as the early 2025. Another thing is that, this always happens for players in this position. I've seen it in all disciplines, is they have a breakthrough, they have all these great results, and then obviously the top players take note of them, they study them more, they come in more prepared, and, as a result, it usually sometimes can lead to a little bit of a downplay in results. I must also say, again, this is purely off memory, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in some of her earlier tournaments as well, she was helped by the draw. There was a few tournaments, I think some of the bigger tournaments, where the draw opened up for her, which enabled her to get to the to the latter rounds. But you can only beat who's in front of you, and she took full advantage of that. And I still think that there has been a slight drop off, and I think probably the main reason is the 2 reasons I said earlier. But still, a World Tour Finals qualification spot will be huge for Tomoka, and it will be a great learning experience for her. She's capable of doing well, but I think similar to Wardani, the experience for me, the experience of this event will be the main thing. So, there we have it. That's my look at the women's singles players that qualified for the World Tour Finals. Please do let me know your own thoughts on all these players. Who do you think's the favourites? Who do you think could be a dark horse? All that kind of stuff. I know we need to wait for the draw, and I will do. I'm not trying to predict anything here because I need the draw in front of me to make any sort of prediction. But it's just quite interesting to talk about them, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the players who have qualified. Next, I will be talking about the men's doubles. So if you click my camera somewhere on the screen, I will have the link coming up for the next video, which will be me talking about the men's doubles. I will see you there. Thanks for watching.